Michelle, and today I'm going to show you how to do a hammered wire link. This little component that we used in this earring here and on one of my earrings here, like this. So basically it's taking a straight piece of wire. It can be long or it can be short, but this is 12 gauge wire that I am using today. And we're going to hammer it, file it, and hole punch it so it has 2 holes in it, and we can use it like a link. Okay, let's get started. So I have my straight wire here. This is about a 1-inch piece of 12 gauge wire. This happens to be silver fill. So when I start hammering, you may start to see some yellow metal coming out the ends, like the cream coming out of a Twinkie. But this is to show you that you can definitely hammer silver fill wire a lot and it'll still hold up on the outside. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do once I have my pre-cut piece of wire is to put part of it in a ring clamp like this, because the wire is kind of short. I don't want to hit my finger with a hammer, so I'm going to pinch maybe 1/3 of the wire like this, and I'm going to put my wedge in my ring clamp like this. And to make sure it stays, you can hit it on the table a couple times, and now it won't come out. Then I'm going to keep the ring clamp portion off of my bench block here, and I'm going to get a nice big hammer that I'm going to use to hit the tip of the wire and a little bit past the tip. And I want it to kind of flare out on the end and gradually taper up to not being hammered. Okay. Then you just start hammering. And we do want to focus on the very tip of the wire. That's what will spread out the end like this. So you hit really, really hard on the end, and you sort of lighten up as you move towards the center of the wire, closer to the ring clamp like this. Okay, so like this so I can see what I'm doing. And you know that you are hitting the piece evenly with your hammer when your piece is lengthening and straight instead of curving one way or the other. Okay, so we'll keep going. Can turn it just a little. Like this. And don't worry if you have this really rough edge on your wire. That's going to happen because that's the cut portion. And imagine that you run over a can in the middle of the road. When you squash the can flat, you're going to have the top of the can be kind of rough like that. So we'll file that away in just a minute. I'm going to hammer just a little bit more. Okay, here we go. And you just want the end of the wire to be flared out enough so that when you punch the hole in it, there'll be a lot of wire on all sides of your hole. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we want to hammer this other end of the wire. Okay, if you want sort of a dog bone shape, you're going to pinch it in your ring clamp like this, and you're going to keep that flat to the surface so that it's flattened in the same direction. However, if you want the second flattened section to be perpendicular to the first side, when you put it in your ring clamp like this, you're going to want your ring clamp at an angle. Okay, and that's just a design choice at that point. Okay. Put my wire in my ring clamp, make sure it stays, and this one I'm going to make it perpendicular. So I turn my ring clamp 90 degrees, and I'm going to start hammering the wire again. So you don't have to hit it a lot of times if you bring the hammer head down with a lot of force, or You can hit it several times with slightly less force and it'll just take a little bit longer. Okay. But again, you want to lighten up as you move towards the ring clamp because you don't want it to be really, really flat over here and then all of a sudden kind of big. You want it to taper nicely. So you lighten up as you move towards the ring clamp. Okay, I think that's kind of wide enough now to punch my second hole on this end. So we're going to take it off of the ring clamp. Ooh, pull out the wedge. And you can see that my second side is perpendicular to my first hammered side. Okay. Okay, so you notice that when we hammered, this wire curved a lot, and that's because we were spreading out the metal, and it doesn't always spread evenly, so it's going to curve in one direction or the other. And one way you can straighten out your wire before doing anything else is getting a nylon hammer and just hammering it very slightly, like this. Okay, so now we have a nice straight piece. Now, I'm going to use one of my other hammers to give this a little bit of texture before I start punching holes in my piece. Okay. This is one of our favorite hammers that we have here. We call it the waffle hammer. And you can see it has all these little raised bumps on here, which will make a nice texture in my wire. Okay, so I'm going to use it on the center portion of my wire here. Just like this. And you can choose to hit it lots of times or just a couple. Okay, I'm going to hit it just a couple times because I like that little speckled texture that it makes. Okay, if you use this hammer and you hit it lots of times all over the place, you'll end up more with a diamond cut texture. Then I'm going to use one of our other hammers. This one's called Rounded Narrow. Okay, and I'm going to use this to put texture on the flattened portions of my piece. And depending on the angle you hold the hammer at, you can get different textures put onto your piece. Okay. So I'm holding this at a slight angle, and sometimes it's easier to have the handle come down at an angle off the block and your table, your workspace. So you get a really nice long straight hit. Like that. You do the same thing for the side. If you hold the hammer at more of a tilt, like this, you'll get shorter strike marks. Okay, and notice I'm only hammering one side of the metal. I'm not turning it over and hitting it on the side because the metal bench block is going to pretty much effectively erase whatever pattern I put on the first side when I start hitting on the second side. Okay. Okay, so now we're done hammering and texturing our wire, and we have to now smooth out the end of the wire with a file. Okay, so this is kind of like a metal nail file, you know, it's textured on both sides, and this is a pretty aggressive file, so you don't want to press too hard when you're using it, or else you're going to take off way more metal than you maybe want to. So it's very light strokes that we're going to do, and these metal files only cut on the push. So don't saw your file back and forth because that's not going to do anything except kind of clog up the teeth of your file. Okay, so this is filing. Basically, you want to just get rid of these little pointy areas, like this. And nice long strokes will allow you to get the most efficient work out of your file, like this. Okay, and again, don't press too hard. You can imagine the file as like nails on your skin. Like if you go very lightly, you'll get a nice scratching. But if you dig really hard, you're going to take off some skin. Okay, we don't want to take off skin. You can also move your file on a curve like this to make your edges a little bit more rounded. Like that. Okay. Like that. If you had one part of your wire stick out a lot, you can also press a lot harder and file it down. Or if it was really obvious, you can get your wire cutter and trim it down just a little bit and then start filing. So you can adjust the shape of the end of your wire at this point. Wire's really thin, so you can just use your regular wire cutter to cut through it. Or press really hard and file it away. Yes. Okay. Okay, so now I have both ends of my wire nicely rounded, and now we are ready to punch holes on both ends. Okay. To punch the holes, I like to have some tape, and I'm just going to fold the tape over the end of the wire, and then I'm going to mark the tape where I want the hole to be. And I'm just using a Sharpie marker here and just drawing a little black dot where I kind of want to aim my hole punch. And I'm going to use this hand punch that I have here. It's kind of like a paper punch where you just squeeze it and it will punch a hole in your metal. And this happens to be the 1.8 millimeter size hole punch. We do have one that can punch a smaller hole as well. I prefer this hand punch to the screw punches that we also carry in the store when doing these kinds of tapered or uneven metals, when punching through the holes, punching holes through the uneven metal like this. Because the screw punches tend to slip on the metal down the tapered section, whereas these hand punches kind of grip and will just poke right through the metal. So now we're ready to punch our hole. All you have to do is kind of position the hole punch over the black dot that you made and make sure that there's enough metal on all sides of your hole. You don't want to punch a hole too close to any of the edges because that'll be kind of a really weak portion of the metal. So once you've kind of ascertained that there is enough metal on all sides of your hole, you're going to give it a good squeeze like that. The tape on the wire will keep the punch from scarring up your wire too much. Okay, so it's like a little cushion. And you're just going to wiggle off the punch, and you can see here I have a nice hole. I'm going to take off my tape so you can see it better. Here we go, like this. Sometimes with the hand punches you'll end up with like a sharp drag on the back of the metal, and if you have that, all you do is you put the pokey section or the sharp section down on your bench block, and you get your nylon hammer and you tap it very lightly like this, and that will smooth out the back of your hole. Okay, we're going to do the second side now. I'm going to get me another piece of tape like this. We're going to draw our dot, and the dot's just kind of like a guide. You know, if you accidentally draw your dot off center, it's not a big deal because you'll know. It just gives you a visual guide for something to aim at. Alrighty, So we're going to punch the second hole. Okay. Squeeze. Wiggle it off. There we go. And again, nylon hammer, and just lightly tap with the sharp side on your block. You won't always have a sharp edge, but if you do, this is one way to get rid of it. You can also file it, but I find the hitting it on the bench block much easier and faster to do. Okay, so now I have my hammered wire link. One more thing you can do with your hammered wire link before you actually put it into your piece of jewelry is to give it a quick polish with a little polishing cloth. And that will get off any marks you made on the wire, and it'll get it nice and shiny and ready to use. Okay. Another thing we do if you're doing a lot of these components is, and you have one, is you can throw it in your tumbler and tumble polish them. And there we go. Now I have my piece that's shaped like a dog bone, hammered without turning like this. And I have textured and hole punched it. And say you want to use this piece as the top of a bracelet. It's kind of hard because it's very straight and stiff like this, so I want to curve it before putting it on my bracelet. And this is how you're going to do it. I'm taking my fancy nylon jaw pliers and just squeezing it to give it a curve. So the piece that we see here that I used to make this component, I started off with about 1 inch of wire, and after all the hammering and texturing, I found that it stretched to about 1 1/4 inches in length, so it did expand by 1/4 inch. Okay, so those were my hammered link components. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and let's make lots of components and lots of jewelry. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.